Beautiful. How do I have? Okay, we'll just do side by side. Okay, awesome. It's recording. You can hear me. I can hear you. Beautiful.
All right.
Awesome. Okay, well, I'm excited. I feel like this will be super cool for just all of our employees that are excited about continued education and want to grow in the field. And then also to share with just like social media and get people to know about both programs that we have going. So I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you want to start, just share a little bit about your background and kind of what inspired you to get into the field of ABA. I feel like a lot of times
Yeah.
people come into the world and they don't even know about it. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So, probably like a lot of people, I started when I was an undergrad, and I went away to college in back in the 90s. 1994 is when I graduated, and I went to college. And my first summer at college, I stayed and I took a class, and the class was on autism, and you elected to work in the field. The clinic was like this little house. I went to Western. And there was this little house that I worked at and learned how to do ABA there with kids with autism. And then from there, it was a different world back then. So really, I just worked with the family. The family actually hired me afterwards, and there weren't BCBAs or RBTs or anything. So I read a lot of books and I continued to take a lot of classes. And I graduated a couple years later. So in 97, I graduated. And then I decided to go to graduate school. So I applied to Eastern and started at Eastern in their clinical behavioral program, clinical behavioral psychology program, which led to a limited license in psychology. And when I walked into the program, I went because they had like some people who worked with autism there. And they handed me a list of like 200 parents that were on the list looking for services. And they're like, here, why don't you call some of these parents? So I was like, oh, okay. So I just started, going out and working in the field and doing that kind of thing. And when I graduated with my master's, I started my own business, and I was one of three companies in Metro Detroit. So my company at the time was called Behavioral Building Blocks. And there were a couple other, Beaumont, I think, had their clinic. And then there was another place called the Early Intervention Center. And so I did all in-home consultation. I had a business partner, and so I drove all over the place doing stuff. And then eventually in 2008, I was hired at Children's Hospital, and I ran there. I was hired to develop their ABA program there, which later became University Pediatricians Autism Program.
yeah.
So I kind of evolved as the director there, and through that, once they started with all the legislation to get ABA passed through insurance back in like 2012, 2013, I started to partner with Michelle Fuhr, who's still currently at UPAC, to create some curriculum. And we really were one of the only places that were doing supervision for people in the field that were trying to get their BCBA. So we had a lot of students come through from a lot of different programs, and we worked with the state. Actually, we got a big grant to create curriculum and do a capacity building program at Wayne State University, and that's how our program started back in I think 2012 was when we approached Wayne State, and 2013 was the start of our first cohort, which we started as just a general certificate program. So it was like 5 classes back then. And I think we were on like task list 3. And then we kind of grew and evolved. We changed to a master's in applied behavior analysis at Wayne State in 2019. And then in 2020, like everybody else, we went online and fully online. And then we actually really liked it. We liked the online, we liked the ability to not waste anybody's time with driving and parking in buildings, because we had a lot of students who were actually driving for like hour and a half one way to come to our program, and then they still had to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
So we were able to really do everything that we did in our face-to-face program online. So we were able to keep our engagement and keep our class sizes small, and really had a lot of activities and behavioral skills training embedded into our curriculum. And we were able to maintain that when we went online, which originally I was kind of really against, but started to really evolve. And so that's kind of where we are now. We created a brand new curriculum starting in our 2024 cohort, which is aligned with the accreditation standards. And actually, I got an email about an hour before I came to this meeting. We had applied for recognition through ABAI, and I got an email that we were just accepted for recognition through ABAI. So I'm super excited about that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we are today. So a little bit of a journey, but I love training. I love teaching. I think that's one of the most important things that we can do is make sure that the next generation of people coming through the system is knowledgeable and able to handle the stress, I guess, of the job and being able to really make sure that the outcomes are just as good for the kids now as they were back then. So I just love that part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super cool. I feel like this is such a rewarding career choice and like path. And
Mhm.
it's cool to hear your story. Like you really started when things weren't even moving in the field and just to see it progress
Yeah.
and evolve over time. I bet that is also rewarding for you as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just there's it's interesting because it's such a small world, but
Yeah.
it's such a big world at the same time. But you can really see the genealogy almost like who came from where and who was their supervisor and who did they learn under. And it's very interesting to kind of look at the history.
Yeah, yeah, very exciting. For anyone that is, I guess, new to the field, how would you describe what ABA is, and how would you say, like, the kind of impact that BCBAs have from day to day?
Yeah, so ABA is really I don't know, I guess I would call it like everything, right? Like it's how we learn, it's how we behave, it's how we interact with other people. Like a lot of people think that ABA is just something that you do with kids with autism, but it really when you think about the theories and the concepts behind it, it really involves everything that we do, everything that makes us people, everything that makes other organisms behave. So we really look at it from that standpoint. In our program, we do focus a lot on autism because we're teaching practitioners to go out in the world and work with kids with autism. But we also have a lot of pieces where we incorporate like working with parents, working with schools, working with kids with other developmental disabilities. We even have a class that targets using applied behavior analysis kind of like outside of the box. So we do some things on ACT and motivational interviewing. We had a guest speaker come in today on motivational interviewing, and all of our students were practicing like how to do those particular techniques. We talk about how applied behavior analysis is used in pain management or in feeding disorders or things like that, kind of outside of the field
Yeah.
where people are used to getting their practicum experience just kind of working with kids within a certain category. But ABA is really very far reaching and it has a lot of utility in a lot of different places and even in a lot of different fields. So I think like it's really limitless when you think about it, but our biggest impact really is with families and kids. And I think we can do a lot to really become very knowledgeable in those areas and make sure that we know the science, not just the techniques that we use, but know the science behind it so that as we're making decisions for families and for kids, we're making decisions that are really founded in something that is going to result in efficacious outcomes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's cool to see like the holistic approach. I
Mhm.
come from a nursing background, but I worked in
Yeah.
pediatrics. So I worked with kiddos, but a lot of times, they come through the door with one problem, we bandage it up, send them on their way. And so it's cool to see how these clinicians really have like they're integrated with the families and in their day to day, and they know their personal lives just outside the treatment plans in the centers. So I love that it's kind of all encompassing as one. You touched on Wayne State's program a little bit, but what would you say makes it unique compared to other programs out there?
Well, I think the biggest thing, well, I don't know, there's a lot of things that make it unique. I always talk about our program as being challenging but supportive. So we have a lot baked into our program. There's a lot academically, but then there's also we have our students running through things out in the field at the same time that they're doing things in the classroom. Our all of our classroom activities are not like your typical lecture-based stuff. We use our applied behavior analysis techniques throughout the classes. Like we're using a variety of things. We embed, of course, like behavioral skills training where we're practicing things that we talk about in the class, either through role play. We have practice packets that we send with students out in the field, and we monitor those things. So we're an online program, but we have a lot of coordination with what our students are doing with their supervisors. I meet with them all. We kind of talk about how things are going. We try to bridge that gap. We do make sure that the students, as they're going through our academic program, that they're also collecting their hours, both their restricted and their unrestricted hours. So that way, by the time they're done, they should be very close to being ready to sit for their exam. And the cool thing about that is not only do they have their hours, but as you're learning, it's much better to learn it in the classroom and then practice it. And
Yeah.
then learn it in the classroom and then practice it because you have that feedback loop. And our program is kind of cyclical when you think about the content. So the students get introduced to a concept and then they practice it in a certain way, and then it kind of comes back around. We move on to something else, and then they get introduced to it again, but in a deeper way with a different utility. So they might learn about reinforcement in foundations and in their conceptual analysis class, but then they're going to come back around to it when they get into their treatment planning class. And then they're going to come back around to it again when they get into their advanced treatment planning, and then come back around again when they get into their OBM class. So it's like the same concept comes around, but then you like go down this deeper and deeper spiral. And our curriculum is very well orchestrated. So I plan with all of the instructors together, and things that we do in one class, definitely you see in another class. And then we build on those things as we go forward. There aren't any repetitions. Like if a concept repeats, the concept repeats, but what you're doing with that concept is going to build and then expand. So I think in the short period of time that our students are here with us, so we have a 5 semester program, they learn a tremendous amount. And they also, like you said, they learn about that holistic approach. We do a lot of work with parent training. We do a lot of work with, utilization of making sure that we're collaborating care. We're talking about how to supervise. We're talking about like more than just the general concepts and foundations. We're talking about how to be like really good clinicians as well.
Right. Yeah, I love that hands-on aspect because, like you said,
Mhm.
maybe you can learn something in a classroom, but if you never actually have that one-on-one and like hands-on experience, essentially, it's probably you're gonna forget it.
Yeah, yeah,
I
for
feel like
sure.
it takes a minute for that brain-mind connection, and so yeah, that's so important. I noticed that even through my own nursing skills, we would kind of have the same program. We'd learn something in the classroom, but then we would go to our clinicals and we would actually see it happen in real life, which I think is so important.
Yeah,
Also,
and get all that feedback from their supervisors out in the field, which is
yeah,
great, and collaborating with them because like the goal is to make sure the student's successful. So if I see a red flag, I want to let the supervisor know and vice versa. And if the student's having a difficulty, like I want to close that loop. I want to close that feedback loop and go, okay, let's all get together. Let's talk about this. What's going on here? How do
right.
we make sure that student is going to be successful and they don't fall through the cracks, which
Yeah.
happens a lot with these programs as well as out in the field. Like there's just so many people learning that
Mhm.
it's like students just get lost. So we do provide a lot of oversight and guidance for those things.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's good to hear.
Yeah.
You mentioned how it's like a 5 semester kind of cohort. What does that mean for the students, I guess, from like start to finish? Is it, all consecutive? Is it like a regular college where they have summers off? What are like hours looking like? Can you kind of,
Yeah. So our program is a 40 credit hour program. So they get a master's in applied behavior analysis. They start in the fall. And in the fall, well, each semester they take 2 or 3 classes depending on which semester, and we actually go continuously. So
okay,
they go fall, winter, spring, fall, winter, and then they graduate there. Throughout the program, we are online. But the online aspect of it is only online in the sense that you don't have to drive anywhere. We have all of our meetings are on Zoom, and we have face-to-face live lectures where, our class sizes are really small, so we don't go over 20. So like right now, it's just you and me talking, but I can still see 20 little faces on the screen. So
right, yeah,
everybody's got their cameras on, everybody's like engaged. So students come in as a cohort. Like I said, the curriculum is very orchestrated. So they take the program as prescribed. So it's the same for everybody. The cool thing is the cohort model means that even though you're online, you have a group of peers. And we do a lot of work to really get to help the students get to know the peers, work together. We actually have a mentorship program. So our first semester students, they mentor our first semester students. So there's a little bit of crossover there. They kind of help them get acclimated to this is graduate school. This is how you study. This is how you work with your group. This is how you complete assignments, like all of that kind of stuff. It's like a way to kind of pass on the knowledge for those students.
Mhm.
But then in addition, we facilitate like make sure you guys get a group chat, make sure you guys are doing study groups on Sunday. Like, what does this look like? So the students really get to know each other. And it's weird because as much as students sometimes are resistant because they're like, oh, it's an online program, I'm going to do my own thing. By the end of it, I have students that came through the program 10 years ago and they're like, oh yeah, I still talk to all my cohort mates
Oh,
and
that's so cool.
it's like a safety net, right? Like
Yeah.
at the end of it so that they can do that. But our program is I always call it like hot and fast. Like it's like you get in and then you blink and then you're like in third semester, right?
Yeah.
And then you blink again and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to graduate. What am I going to do?
Mhm.
Because it really is a lot of work. If you join our program, it's not necessarily the easiest program, but it is a very comprehensive program. And like I said, you do get a lot of support, but they do a lot at the same time because they are doing a full-time program and they also have to work in the field. So we recommend our students are working at least 20 hours a week. Some of them work more, some of them a little bit less, but usually about 20 hours a week so that they're getting far enough along in their practicum so that they can practice everything that they need to practice before they become a BCBA. So again, it's kind of that safety net, like how's it going? How's it looking? Are you getting those experiences? We're talking about them in class. We're kind of connecting the dots with the supervisors. So yeah, it's a little bit of work,
Mhm.
but the students, we have exit interviews at the end, and the students give us feedback on like, how was your experience? What's going on? And they always are grateful for the amount of work that they had to do. Even though it was hard and challenging, they do feel very prepared when they're finished.
Yeah, that's important too. How would you say, I know just talking to different clinicians, the exam seems to be a big thing that is challenging to
Mhm.
pass. How have you seen like your different students kind of go through the program and how are they for the test? And do you guys offer any type of support, after they're done with their master's but preparing to take the test?
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of a multifaceted question for sure. One of the things that we do is we do build in a lot of support mechanisms all the way through. We start preparing students for their exam right in first semester, talking about the exam, talking about what's on the exam. A couple of things that we have baked into the program is our quizzes. And our many of our final and midterm exams are very much in the format of what the questions are going to look like for the BCBA exam. So we don't start off super easy and like, just doing
Right.
a lot of definitions and fill in the blanks. So we're preparing our students in that way. We use the BDS modules, Behavior Development Solutions, throughout our curriculum as well. Students purchase that in semester 2, and then they have to complete the study modules during class. So they have certain assignments that are due, which also helps them to prepare for that. By the end of the course, or by the end of the program, they usually complete 300 of those modules. So not all of them, but they've got a good amount done. And then we talk to them about actually I mentioned the exit interview. So one of the things that I do is the students keep a portfolio across each semester where they document their performance, both in the classroom and in the field. And they also document all their feedback that they've gotten. So feedback from me, from the other instructors, from their supervisors. At the end, I evaluate all of that. And then we do an individualized meeting with each student. And about 10 minutes or so, I give them feedback. Like I go through and I say, okay, this is what your performance looked like. This is what I think you're going to need to do before you take your exam.
Mm.
Or, hey, I think you're ready. Like you've done everything that you need to do. Or I'm really concerned you struggled over here. I think you're going to need this extra support or do this extra thing. So right before they leave, I do give them that feedback. Like I said, then the students give us feedback. So it's like,
Right.
it's fair, right? But we do that. Our Our first time pass scores are variable. So in the beginning, they were lower. They've gone up and they've kind of hovered right around like 65-ish, which is like kind of close to the national standards. But we're constantly trying to improve that.
Yeah.
So we're evaluating our coursework, and part of the exit interview and part of the data that we take is to reflect back on what's going on, what happened with this, what happened with that. So I think that, I mean, of course, that's a very important aspect of what we're doing.
Mm.
As far as after the fact, we do encourage the students to work together. We have in the past facilitated some opportunities for them when they want to come back and maybe do some study groups or, interact maybe with current students. Guiding study groups and things like that sometimes is helpful, like, mentoring, other students. So we have offered that. On the rare occasion, students have reached out and they've wanted like extra assistance, and there have been times when either me or some of the other instructors have sat down with them and kind of reevaluated. Okay, so you've taken the exam a couple of times, like what's going on,
Yeah,
how do we fix this? So I wouldn't say that all the students kind of go down that path, but ultimately the goal is that we want them to pass, to become clinicians, to do what they need to do. So, if there's something that we need to do to kind of assist with that, we try to help out. So
yeah.
the students are pretty close to the instructors in our program. Like I said, it's pretty small. So they usually feel pretty comfortable reaching out when they need something.
That's awesome. Yeah. I feel like what you touched on, how sometimes they come back and are able to like lead others or mentor others. I feel like being able
Mhm.
to teach the topics or explain
Yeah.
it, that's when you know you have it exactly. So that
Yeah.
sounds like it would be very important. What advice would you give to maybe a BCBA or a tech or an RBT or someone that's interested in the field that wants to become a BCBA, but maybe they're just a little bit intimidated on either going back to school or just kind of starting the process and they're like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. Well, certainly looking at the different programs that are out there, I think is a good place to start, because when I'm looking at students for our program, it's really about fit, right? Like what's going on in your life, where are you working, what opportunities do you have, what are the requirements for the program? Does that fit the way that you learn? Does it fit what your goals are? Does it fit your current life restrictions or barriers or anything that you've got going on? So I think it's important to evaluate like what are those things, because programs can be very different. Just because it's an online program doesn't mean that it's going to be the same as another one. Just because it's a brick and mortar program doesn't mean that it's going to be the same. How many people do they have in their classes? How many people do they graduate? What are the requirements? How many credit hours? Do they require you to do field work? Do they not require you to do field work? Like some of those kinds of things. Sometimes you have to work like on site. Sometimes you can go wherever you want, So there's a lot of differences. So figuring out what you're looking for, I think, is probably the first thing. So a little bit of self-reflection. Where are you? What are you doing? What do you want to do? Looking at the quality of the program, I think, is another thing, like making sure that you're getting the kind of support that you need. And then I think the path is going to be really individualized. Are you coming right from undergrad? Are you coming from like a big break? What does that look like?
Yeah.
And we have students that kind of take both paths, obviously. So coming from a big break is a little bit different. Like, do you have the technology? Can you navigate like the computer world that you need to navigate for some of the things that you need to get done? And then if you need some remediation, do it, like kind of go back and get some resources, maybe take a college class if you haven't done that in a while. If you're in the undergraduate pool and you're like, okay, well, I just finished, I'm kind of ready to go, but I'm not quite sure. It's not bad if you aren't familiar with the field to get your feet wet, right? Go out, be a behavior technician, make sure it's the thing that you want to do. But if you're a behavior technician already, if you don't want to be a behavior technician for the rest of your life, then you kind of need to take that jump and you need to find something that's going to work for you, and try to get your life in order, right? Like decide like, how do I carve out the time? How do I make time to study and be successful? Because you don't want to go into a program that you don't have time to do the work, because what's going to end up happening is you're either not going to do well in the program or you're not going to do well on the exam. And either way, it's going to delay. So you might as well get yourself like set and ready mentally and kind of prepared, like so that you have the supports that you need so you can be successful. I talk to a lot of people. So people that are interested in the program, people that don't know if they're interested in the program, people that don't know if they're interested in ABA. So I think that's a really good place to start if you're not sure. Talk to people, talk to supervisors, talk to program coordinators, talk to people out in the field that are going through different programs and get the feel for what's out there. So that way, you're kind of coming at it with a little bit more knowledge and you can make better decisions.
Yeah.
That's definitely where I would start. And if you're thinking about Wayne State, then, go through, I've got a QR code that I can put up at the end.
Oh,
So people can go right to our website and they can take a look. There's a lot, all the programs have a lot of information on their website. So Google them, take a look and just kind of see what the different programs are. Look at the classes,
yeah.
see what's interesting for the classes. Like, are you interested in the program that you're getting ready to enroll in? But then if you're still not sure, then set up a meeting, talk to an advisor, make sure it's a good fit.
Yeah, for sure. What, this is going to be a broad question, just someone that doesn't come from the background. What are the undergrad, I guess, minors that they would need to qualify to get
Right.
their master's? That makes sense.
So, at least for our program, it doesn't really matter what your undergraduate is.
Okay.
It doesn't matter for taking the BCBA exam. So we don't really restrict it. Other programs might. Most of our students do come from either psychology or some sort of a helping field, right? So maybe social work, maybe speech and language, maybe education. Oddly enough, we get a lot of med school dropouts,
Wow.
which is kind of funny because I think that they like the idea of helping, but maybe didn't like the idea of chemistry or, some of those hard science things.
Yeah.
Or they did, but they didn't like the idea of not having enough personal exposure to the patients, right?
Yeah,
So,
that's what I felt like as well.
yeah.
So I can
And our
see.
field is very unique because it's like, you get that helping aspect, you get the science, and we are, really scientists and we get
Yeah.
to, use evidence-based treatments which work, but we don't, it's way more personal, like it's definitely you get to spend a lot more time with the clients, their parents, kind of look at that holistic approach where I think a lot of the other helping fields, it's a lot more limited. So we have people from all kinds of backgrounds. And my requirement for our program is that they have to like get working in the field. So if I interview somebody for our program that does not have a job as a behavior technician, I tell them that they need to go get a job as a behavior technician.
Okay.
And I will sometimes admit them to the program, but only if they really know what they're getting into,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's a
Yeah.
different world for sure. Just coming from a nursing standpoint, but seeing it from the outside view, I can definitely
Yeah.
tell.
Yeah.
I've actually had a couple clinicians that I've either talked to or on our team that were nurses before this. I'm like, oh wow, I didn't even know that. I guess I thought before that you had to have a certain undergrad and then you got your master's and did it that way. But it's cool to know that you can kind of have anything, and if that's your passion, you can excel in that.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. One other quick question that came to mind in terms of like hours of the day, like are your Zoom meetings and classes morning? Is it all nights, weekends? Like what does that look like in terms of someone who is trying to balancing, getting their hours as a practicum student, maybe working and going to school?
Yeah. So our program, we try to keep the schedule pretty consistent. And what it's been for several years and what it is currently is we have classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So like I said, we usually do 2 or 3 classes per semester. So if we have 3 classes per the semester, then it's either a full day on Tuesday, half day Thursday, or half day on Tuesday, full day Thursday. So classes start in the morning at 8:30. And then so every class that we do is like just a once a week class. So if we do foundations, foundations is going to run from 8:30 in the morning until 11 o'clock. then you're going to have a quick break, and then you're going to have an afternoon field experience class. And then on Thursday, you're going to do like conceptual analysis class, and then you're going to be done for the day. So it's always one or the other, right? So either Tuesday whole day, Thursday whole day, but that's kind of what our schedule looks like now. We're always done by like 2:30. You could do an afternoon client. You can obviously work a half a day on whatever day we're not doing that class for the full day. And then usually students just, take that time off. Like I said, I recommend that they do about 20 hours in the field. I
Yeah.
don't recommend that they do much more than that because the coursework itself takes a lot of time. You have
Yeah.
a lot of readings, you have a lot of homework, you have to prepare for your exams, you have to learn so much content. If you haven't looked at the task list lately, like obviously, like take a look at the task list, but there is a lot of content
Yeah.
and we have to cover all that content and we have to make sure that students are really knowledgeable. So there's a lot of work to be done
Mm.
with that, but certainly we're somewhat flexible and firm kind of at the same time. So as long as they can, kind of carve out those times, the rest of it I think can add some flexibility.
Nice. Yeah, it's nice to have that consistency. Like, okay, I know I have to show up here, but I could be flexible either in my study time or with my groups
Mhm.
or peers, things like that.
Right.
Awesome. Awesome. This has been so good. For anyone listening, what's the best way, I guess, to get in contact with you or Wayne State if they're interested in the program and want to move forward?
Yeah, so if it's okay, I'll share my screen.
Yeah.
And then so can you see this QR code?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
So obviously you can Google. You can Google Wayne State University Masters in Applied Behavior Analysis and you'll find us if you want to do that. I am Krista Clancy and my name and phone number and email address is kind of plastered all over the website,
Perfect.
but you can also use the QR code and it'll take you right there if you want to do that right now. Best way to get a hold of me is to send me an email. And then if we decide that, like, if I can answer your questions over email, I will. And if we can't, then we'll set up a meeting. And I do a lot of like quick virtual meetings just to kind of touch base. Sometimes they're 5 minutes, sometimes they're half an hour. But it really helps to kind of acclimate students depending on what their questions are. Like, is this a good fit for you? Should you apply? What kind of application questions do you have? Is this like, what's my goal in life? Like, I mean, whatever the question is, I'm okay with that. But definitely just reach out and I'd be happy to talk.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Krista, for sharing. I feel like this definitely gave a good overview, especially from someone that doesn't necessarily have the background. I'm coming in with fresh eyes as well. So I think this will help a lot of people that either have been looking and are interested, or maybe they have never thought about kind of taking that next step and continuing. So I'm excited to share this with our team. Yeah, I'm really excited. And I appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing your story and then also what you guys have going on at Wayne State.
Yeah, I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so very much.
Of course, we'll be in touch, I'm sure, and have a great day.
All right, you too. Thank you.